To have a fully protected back, we have to be able to brace, build, mobilize. And so when my back was at its worst, the only step that I could think about was the bracing period. And so I have it written down here, mainly to help me, not to explain so much for you. But the world of treatment around the back pain focuses a lot on bracing, which in short, largely has to do with lumbopelvic stabilization and intra-abdominal pressure. And so all that lumbopelvic stabilization means, lumbo is back, pelvic is hips. So it's literally back, hip, stable. And so when we're thinking about that, that's a lot of these moves like bird dogs, where we're trying to be able to move the opposite limbs while keeping your trunk completely stable. And the opposite side, dead bugs. Now with more of a focus on the front of the core, the same principles and mindset is there. This is very standard in physical therapy, is let's completely stabilize and not get you in any compromised position, avoid rounding, avoid twisting. That's the thing that got you hurt. Let's brace. And that works for a few weeks. That is actually a super valid component of acute injury protocols. The problem is, with myself and a lot of people, that's where we were left off after physical therapy to figure it out. And so if we do lumbopelvic stabilization, we get this all set solid. And then IA pressure, intra-abdominal pressure, if you were to wear a weightlifting belt and you're going to squat, you're taught to try to inflate your stomach like a balloon and press against the belt. So at the bottom, you're super, super braced here. Everything in here is super solid and tight. What happens when you've done this and you've stabilized your hips and your back? You're practicing perfect posture, perfect bracing, you're squeezing tight and trying to make everything super, super aligned, and you still keep getting hurt. Then we have to look to stage 2. If you've braced, that's awesome for the first few weeks. Next, we have to get to building. So if we have an issue at the actual low back, whether that's in the musculature, in a joint, in the disc, or the actual spine itself, it's in this area here. But then we're only trying to stabilize the core. If you could see how little the core actually protects the whole back in comparison to the psoas, the spinal erectors, the QL, these much larger tissues all around the spine, but we tend to only worry about this core. And so we have anatomy here. You could see the proportions we need to train the low back just as hard as we're training the abs. And so to directly build now the low back, we have 2 levers we can pull. I've spoken on this before. Where we might have to start with a lot of people is going to be tension. If you can't handle reps yet in flexion, our goal is going to build 2 minutes on a back extension with 2 legs, and then 1 minute on 1 leg, and switch. That progression over weeks eventually will give you more leeway to handle modest range until you can get further and further and start to actually tax some of the tissue right along the spine. So at first, this may just work the large muscles, the glutes, the hamstrings, or spinal erectors. But even after that, once we unlock motion, we can go single leg and start to train muscles more close to the spine like the multifidus. As soon as you have 1 leg holding your trunk and you're not tipping sideways, the only thing keeping you there are now the muscles that are closer to the spine. And so doing 1 leg reps, building up to 20 body weight is a super productive standard on both sides. So you can still mask an imbalance training the back extension on 2 legs if you have a severe issue on one side. And so this is the building. This can lead up to what I showed, gradually loading to something like this, a bar and neck. It seems scary, but it's just new and novel. But it's the same adaptation done gradually as a back squat. And so you don't need to get to that level, but you have to understand if you have an issue at the back, we're gonna have to build. And so start with the body weight reps. work up to the standards of holds, then work up to motion and try to get a single leg set of 20 reps on each leg. And then third, we need to mobilize. So if you've braced, you're at a PT perhaps, you're building, and now you can actually get back to lifting and starting to feel like yourself. How do we prevent this issue from coming back? I think the missing link, when you've been lifting for a long time and you may have fallen to imbalance and you've gotten pretty strong, a lot of times it's just the loss of mobility. So when my back was at its worst and I tried something like a split squat for the first time, I did not have the type of mobility to be able to do a full flat ground split squat at all. Nor did I have the joint health either. But if you could look at, why is this a demonstration of a supported back and spine? Well, where does this muscle go? I'm stretching out the hip flexors, largely the psoas major, which is the deepest hip flexor that runs to the front of the spine. So every bit of mobility I can get here is actually going to help the tilt and pull that happens in the front of the spine. And so yeah, when I was the worst with my back, I couldn't do any sort of split squat flat leading up to something like a split. There was no thought of it. Now, if you took the split, the other side of that would be spinal flexion or hamstring flexibility. I'm still trying to get my elbow to my toe, but that really started first with me even getting my hands past my knees. Once sciatica struck and I had TV static and I was afraid to bend forward, everything from my calf, hamstrings, back of the knee even just got so stiff. So the first step of even getting to a toe touch, palms, elbow, is gonna be building tolerance through building, and then taking something like an elephant walk. At this gradual level, you can keep your back flat to start, and starting to work through slow tension behind the knee. And then you go lower, then you go lower at various heights. I could show this very in depth, but I just want you to understand the concept. I have more videos in depth about mobility, more videos in depth about building, and so I just want to show the progression altogether. All these points are valid. Lumbopelvic stabilization is a thing. It's just grossly overused in a world of chronic back pain where people have never gotten to step 2, which is building. And so, simple takeaways of this: do the first steps post-injury, brace properly, learn to control your pelvis, let the initial injury heal, and then get back to building when you feel safe, starting with holds, tension, gradual motion, single leg, 20 reps. Then get to mobility. A great simple standards to pursue would be a split squat, starting as light and elevated as you need, going lower and lower and lower till you get to the flat ground. That's going to be great insurance that you're not dealing with a pelvic tilt issue or unnecessary tugging on the spine. And then the posterior side, work through the elephant walks, get lower and lower until touching the toes is a great standard. How far you go after that is up to you. But yeah, I just wanted to try to piece all this together. There's a lot of confusion and noise in the space of back injury. I think all 3 of these work. You hear people say mobility is the key for back pain. Building the direct back is the key for back pain. I talk about that a lot. But bracing and trying to actually go into movements with the right intention and cues, that's all valid. All of it matters. And so if we only highlight one, it's not the most honest, it's not true. But last thing I'll say, if you've been in the loop and you're kind of lifting, kind of not, and you're doing back squats, and then you're waking up with pain the next day, so you're trying front squats, and you're like, okay, that feels a little better, and then you're in pain the next day. You, my friend, are entering what we call a loop, and that's where I spent for years. This is a wake-up call to let you know there is a progression, there is a spectrum to work through on all of these. Just get to work. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. If you need further coaching and help, the Back Breakthrough Blueprint is available. There's a link in the description I'll put. Message me. I answer majority of messages on all platforms, so just here to help. Thank you. Hope this helps.